Hello, my name is John Samaika. I am a senior researcher at the International Water Management Institute in Colombo, Sri Lanka. I would like to speak to you today about springs as overlooked biodiversity hotspots with a call for their global conservation. Springs are quite significant but overlooked ecosystems. For a majority of rivers globally, springs provide 100% of the base flow and provide drinking water for hundreds of millions of people, especially in mountain and karst regions. Agricultural irrigation from spring-fed systems support millions of farms in Africa and Asia and the Mediterranean. And the global bottled spring water industry is worth some 200 billion US dollars. Springs host unique, often endemic species, being at the interface of groundwater and surface water. And many of these are then, of course, globally restricted. There are many threats to springs. These include groundwater over-extraction, pollution from agriculture, land use change and deforestation, and, of course, infrastructure development. And this is mainly, of course, because springs are actually regarded as water resources, and very little thought is typically given to the biological diversity at springs. There's also a huge neglect in policy and monitoring, and springs are indeed rarely recognized in national or biodiversity legislation. So in speaking about threats on springs, I wanted to highlight one. There are, of course, thousands of possible case studies, but this one is quite interesting. This is the Del Rio spring system in Arizona, which was once the main headwaters system of the Verde River. And you can see from this graph that it actually has experienced a sharp decline in flow over 25 years, now producing only about 1/10 of its historical discharge. And this drop is primarily due to groundwater abstraction from the Little Chino aquifer to supply growing municipal and industrial demand by communities. As a result, of course, the base flow to the Verde River has diminished, drying sections of the river and degrading the riparian ecosystems along that river. So if trends here would continue, that would mean actually that this system would cease flowing entirely. So then the question is, from a global conservation perspective, what needs to happen? So let's start where we actually are. And from the perspective of the Global Commission on the Economics of Water, water is actually a global common good. And we cannot look at water simply as a resource, but have to start thinking about water in terms of its societal value, and as well as its environmental value, of course. And so we then have to consider the hydrological cycle and its connectivity when we want to start thinking about water as a global common good. And then what needs to happen? Well, so first of all, we need to actually embed hydrological resilience into the Convention for Biological Diversity targets. And that means then we need to embed hydrological resilience into targets on the protection and restoration of springs and wetlands, as well as into ecological integrity. And we then have to consider the establishment of an intergovernmental coalition. And that means then that the secretariats of Ramsar, of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, and the Convention on Biological Diversity need to come together and start having a common language around um, the hydrological cycle, um, and yeah, wording, particularly when it comes then to the restoration and protection of habitats, and then also consider a common language when it comes to indicators. And finally, we need a revision, if you like, of the funding mechanisms. And that means then that the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environmental Facility need to find a way to establish a kind of cross-financing mechanism to support wetland restoration. And this could then mean that wetlands are no longer, such as springs, considered just simply sites in a landscape, but become part of a climate adaptation strategy and become climate adaptation infrastructure. Well, and that takes me to the end of this particular presentation. I look forward to your questions, whether you have them here at the conference, or of course you can reach me on my email address as in the slide. Thank you so much.